This is All India Radio. Please stand by for the next program.
This is All India Radio. You will now hear comments from the press. The Asian Age, in its editorial titled Nationalism Apart, it is a sketchy roadmap, writes, it is hard to believe that the Sankalp Patra, or the document to resolve, issued on Monday is all that the BJP could summon by way of its election manifesto for the Lok Sabha polls, for which voting begins as early as Thursday. Much of the declaration in lofty, if jaded language, seems recycled hot air from the time the party was an unheard of entity that couldn't dream of getting into the driver's seat. The desire to be seen as strong nationalists while political opponents are deemed not strong enough to shoulder the burden of nationalism permeates through the document, as does tub thumping. However, there is little to suggest that this is a document put together by a party that has ruled a vast country like India for the past 5 years, even if the performance is widely viewed to be of indifferent quality. A ruling party with serious plans, if it gained an encore, is not expected to issue its chart of intentions just 3 days before polling begins. This suggests the inclination to not just show its hand. From the party the BJP was until the last Lok Sabha election in 2014 to what it has become now may be gauged from a striking fact that emerges from the manifesto. 5 years ago, the party was still collegial. The photo of top leaders was on the cover page. This time, that approach was junked. Only Prime Minister Narendra Modi stares down from the cover. The Statesman, in its editorial titled Small Satisfaction, says the apex quotes uncharacteristically ambivalent position on increasing the use of VVPAT machines during the upcoming poll does little to enhance the authority and credibility of the Election Commission of India, nor does it contribute much to its stated objective of raising the satisfaction levels of the key participants in the exercise, the contesting parties. The neither here nor there order from the CJI, Ranjan Gogoi, and Justices Deepak Gupta and Sanjeev Khanna is unconvincing, to put it mildly, at a point in time of unprecedented fierceness in political rivalry, which has dragged so many institutions of the democracy into a quagmire. Had the lordships been as confident about the incorruptibility of the electronic voting machines as Nirvachan Sadan contends, they ought to have forcefully rejected the claims of 21 opposition parties and directed them to desist from being obstructionists. Yet by ordering a less than token increase in the number of VVPAT devices, the court has permitted a continuance of the no smoke without fire theory. The worst suspicions will have been confirmed if more VVPATs are deployed in a subsequent poll. On such a critical query, the citizen was certainly entitled to a more definitive judicial verdict. Constraint of time is a tame excuse, or at least that could have been mentioned to raise hopes for the future. A clean poll process is a citizen's entitlement. He is sick of the authoritarian attitude of those wielding power. The Pioneer, in its editorial title A Game of Ranking, says every year most Indian business publications, both magazines and newspapers, rate India's best business schools. The rankings are pretty predictable, and even the administrators and students of the top-ranked institutions find them to be a chore. But for many smaller institutions, getting ranked might mean the difference between survival and death. A good position will draw new students. However, the highly competitive nature of the game, with several media houses bending over backwards to please institutions that advertised, and institutions themselves knowing that they could buy a better spot, means that the college ranking system has been badly broken, particularly in the case of professional institutions. This is symptomatic of the Wild West nature of India's education sector. In fact, while politicians lament the lack of jobs for youth, which is an undeniable fact, they rarely lament the poor state of Indian education, because they themselves are knee-deep in the sector and purveyors of substandard education. So, a standardized ranking system monitored by the government, the Ministry of Human Resource Development, MHRD to be precise, made sense. The Financial Express, in its editorial titled Social Media Has to Answer Some Tough Questions, writes, in the past, when Indian politicians have tried to hold a Twitter or a WhatsApp accountable for what is posted or circulated through them, the normal reply has been that they are just platforms, and that in the case of WhatsApp, they cannot even read the messages that are posted, giving in the government's demand of helping trace messages. WhatsApp, and said, violates privacy concerns. That view has, however, taken a beating recently, with both Australia and now the UK deciding to hold social media bosses responsible if offensive content on these platforms is not removed at the earliest. While this is not an outright assault on social media will get a certain time to remove posts which will be identified by the government authorities. That is likely to be the first step. Indeed, newspaper reports suggest the UK regulations were drawn up after consultations with social media entrepreneurs like Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. Interestingly, some weeks ago, Zuckerberg surprised many when he explicitly called for government regulation on content. While this could be a tactic to ensure the government uses light regulation on social media, it is nonetheless a change in Facebook's stance so far. Those were the comments from the press presented to you by the News Services Division of All India Radio.
This broadcast came to you